My daughter was 6 years old. She stood at the front door that morning, holding a small stuffed rabbit against her chest, asking me when her mother was coming back. I did not know what to say. So I knelt beside her and told her, "She may not come back, but I will." Family Karma Effect viewers, our channel currently has only 70 subscribers, and our next goal is to reach 100 subscribers. So please support us by subscribing to our channel. That became the promise that changed my life. I had already built a business empire most men would have feared to challenge. People respected my name and others avoided saying it too loudly. But none of that mattered when my daughter needed someone to pack her school lunch or sit beside her when she was sick. I kept my dangerous world away from her. She knew me as her father, not as the man behind closed doors. For years, I watched her grow while hiding the truth about how I had earned everything we had, and every sacrifice seemed worth it. Until the day she brought a man home and introduced him as her husband. Chapter 2. The man I knew. Something was wrong with him before my daughter ever noticed it. His name was Daniel, and he was polite the first time we met. He shook my hand firmly, looked me directly in the eyes, and called me sir. Most men who entered my house were nervous around me. Daniel was not. That did not impress me. It made me curious. My daughter loved him, and that was the only reason I allowed him close. I told myself that perhaps I was simply being too cautious after spending most of my life trusting very few people. During dinner, Daniel asked about my businesses. Not casually. He wanted to know what I owned, who managed my companies, and whether my daughter would someday inherit them. I put my fork down. "My daughter has never asked me about money," I said. Daniel smiled. "I am only thinking about her future." I said nothing, but from that moment, I began watching him. Not as a father watching his daughter's husband, as a man watching a potential threat. Chapter 3. He wanted more than her. For the first few months, Daniel treated my daughter well. At least, that was what she believed. He brought her flowers, took her to expensive restaurants, and spoke softly whenever I was around. My daughter looked happy and I tried to accept him. Then the question started again. How much is the house worth? Does your father keep everything under his own name? Will you inherit the companies? My daughter told me about these conversations without realizing how serious they were. I told her to be careful. She became defensive. "You never trusted him," she said. Maybe she was right. But I had spent too many years learning that people rarely reveal what they truly want at the beginning. One evening, one of my lawyers placed a folder on my desk. Inside were documents connected to a property I had intended to leave to my daughter. Daniel had already been asking about it through another company. I stared at the papers for a long time. He was not simply trying to build a future with my daughter. He was trying to build a future with everything I had built for her. And he had underestimated how carefully I watched my own family. Chapter 4. The call after midnight. My phone rang at 2:17 in the morning. I knew it was my daughter before I answered. "Dad." Her voice broke. I sat up immediately. "What happened?" For several seconds she could not speak. Then she whispered, "He wants everything." I closed my eyes. "Who?" "You know who." "Daniel." She told me he had been pressuring her for weeks. He wanted her to convince me to transfer several properties and accounts into their names. When she refused, he accused her of choosing her father over her marriage. I listened without interrupting. Inside, something cold was taking shape, but I did not raise my voice. I simply asked, "Where are you?" "At home." "Lock the door." She became silent. Then she asked the question I had spent years hoping she would never ask. "Dad, who are you really?" I looked across my dark office at the photographs of her childhood on my desk. For 25 years, I had protected her from the truth. Now, the truth was standing at her front door, and I knew I could no longer hide it. Chapter: The truth she never knew. Drove to my daughter's house before sunrise. She opened the door with red eyes. She looked at me differently now, as if she were seeing a stranger wearing her father's face. "Tell me the truth," she said. So I did. I told her that the companies she thought were ordinary family businesses were only the visible part of my world. Behind them were years of difficult deals, dangerous alliances, and men who respected my decisions because they knew I never made empty threats. Her face went pale. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because I wanted you to have a life that belonged to you." I told her about the years after her mother left, the nights I stayed awake beside her bed, the school meetings I attended after working until dawn, the birthdays I refused to miss even when powerful men were waiting for me. "I could have given you everything," I said, "but I wanted you to learn how to live without needing my money." She started crying. Then she whispered, "You gave me everything anyway." For the first time in years, I had no answer. I simply pulled my daughter into my arms. And behind that quiet moment, I knew the real danger had only begun. Chapter 6. The Betrayal Inside Thee. The next morning, I called the 3 people I trusted most, no one else. I wanted answers before I made a single move. Within an hour, we discovered that confidential financial records had been copied from one of my private offices. Someone had also accessed information about properties connected to my daughter. Then another report arrived. One of my senior employees had been meeting Daniel in secret. I stared at the photograph on the table. For 20 years, that man had worked beside me. I had trusted him with information that could have destroyed my entire organization. Now he had given some of it to my daughter's husband. My advisor asked what I wanted done. I looked at him. Nothing. Yet, he seemed surprised. "Sir, if they believe we know nothing, they will make another mistake." That evening, I watched my daughter sitting quietly in my office. She had spent her whole life believing my world was safe. Now she was learning that the greatest danger had not come from strangers. It had come through the man she had married, and somewhere, inside my own empire, someone was helping him. I had spent decades building walls around my family. Now I had to find out who had learned how to walk through them. Chapter 7. Power has a price. By the end of the week, I knew exactly what Daniel had been planning. He wanted control of several properties, access to private accounts, and influence over the companies my daughter would eventually inherit. But there was something worse. The information he had stolen had reached a rival who had been waiting for an opportunity to weaken my organization. My advisors wanted me to strike back. One of them said, "You can end this tonight." I looked at him. I know. For most of my life, that answer would have been enough. But then I thought about my daughter. I had spent 25 years building an empire because I wanted her to have choices. What was the point of protecting her future if I destroyed it trying to defend it? So I made a decision that surprised everyone in the room. "We protect her first," one man asked. "And the empire?" I looked toward the window. "The empire can survive. My daughter could not survive losing another family member because of me." That night, I signed papers transferring control of several businesses to trusted managers. For the first time in my life, I was willing to lose power, not because I was weak, because I finally understood what power was supposed to protect. Chapter 8. The Man Who thought he had won. Daniel arrived at my office 3 days later. He walked through the doors like a man who had already won. My daughter was not with him. That was exactly how I wanted it. He sat across from my desk and placed a folder in front of me. "I think we should make this simple," he said. I opened the folder. Property transfers, financial agreements, documents prepared without my daughter's full understanding. I looked at him for several seconds. "You planned this carefully." He smiled. "I planned for the future." "No," I said quietly. "You planned for my death." His expression changed. For the first time, the confidence disappeared from his face. I pushed another folder across the desk. Inside were copies of his private meetings, financial transfers, messages with my employee, and evidence connecting him to the rival organization. Daniel stopped breathing for a moment. "You cannot prove." "I already did." The room became silent. I could have destroyed him. Instead, I stood. You came into my family believing. My wealth made me vulnerable. He said nothing. I looked him directly in the eyes. Quite, you were wrong. Then I opened the door. 2 security officers were waiting outside. Daniel finally understood. The man he had spent months trying to manipulate had never been powerless. He had simply been patient. I could have taken everything from Daniel. My advisors expected me to. They wanted his accounts frozen, his businesses destroyed, and his name removed from every place where it still carried respect. But I refused, not because I had forgiven him. I simply did not want my daughter to spend the rest of her life watching her father punish the man she once loved. Instead, I protected what mattered. The stolen information was recovered. The people inside my organization who had betrayed me were removed. The properties connected to my daughter were secured so no one could touch them without her knowledge. Daniel lost access to the empire. But I did not destroy his entire life. When my daughter asked why, I told her the truth. Because I spent 25 years protecting you. I will not spend the rest of my life teaching you that revenge is the only answer. She looked at me for a long time, then she took my hand. I thought you built all of this because you loved power. I smiled sadly. No, looked at her. I built it because I was afraid that one day you would need me, and I would have nothing to give you. She cried quietly, and for the first time, I realized she finally understood the man behind the empire. Chapter 10. Everything I Had. A few months later, the house became quiet again. No meetings in the middle of the night. No strangers asking questions. No lawyers placing threatening documents on my desk. Just silence. One Sunday morning, my daughter came to see me. She brought coffee. We sat outside together, just like we used to when she was a child. For a while, neither of us said anything. Then she looked at me and said, "Dad, you know what I remember most?" I smiled. "What?" "You were always there. Not the companies, not the money, not the men who feared me. Just me, her father." I looked at the city beyond the garden and thought about everything I had spent my life building. For years, I believed wealth meant security, power meant protection, and control meant never being helpless again. But sitting beside my daughter, I finally understood something I had been too busy to see. My greatest possession had never been the empire. It was the promise I made to a 6-year-old girl standing at a front door. Her mother had left